All right, go ahead, Dan.
Okay. On behalf of HCR and the Section 8 team, welcome to the proposal workshop for the winter, now spring, 2022 project-based voucher NOFA. We are putting a much larger allocation than usual on the street, as you'll notice from the NOFA. Up to 500 vouchers will be made available. So if you are a developer putting together a new deal, or you are simply a property manager trying to make a current property under HCR's oversight more economically viable and affordable, this is a good year for you to be pursuing Section 8 project-based vouchers. Our priorities have been adjusted slightly for this year, as Courtney will go over. And as always, technical assistance is available through Courtney, as well as through Lenny Skrell and other folks who will be on this call and who will introduce. So please reach out if you have questions. As many of you likely know, the housing market in New York State has become very tight. So this is really an important time for the agency to use this valuable resource to help facilitate the availability of quality, affordable housing in the marketplace. So we look forward to working with you, and best wishes on a successful proposal.
Thank you so much, Dan. So let me introduce the other people from HCR on the call. We have Connie Bruno, who's our Director of Section 8, Lenny Skrell, one of our development directors, and Heather Spitzberg, who's the head of our environmental review unit. So we'll be available to answer questions. I'll go through the presentation. We are recording the presentation for posting on our website as well. So I'll ask that everyone keep themselves on mute. You are able to unmute yourself for a question, and you can also use the chat if you have a question. So let me get started, and we'll open the floor for questions at the end. So our project-based Section 8 voucher request for proposals has a few goals. The first is we're seeking qualified applicants to increase the supply of quality housing that's affordable to low-income households in communities across New York State in support of deconcentration of poverty and expanding housing and economic opportunities. Our other goal is to preserve the long-term viability of existing affordable housing that have been previously assisted with federal and state investments. As Dan mentioned, we do have a large number of vouchers available in this particular RFP as compared to the previous. We're making up to 500 project-based vouchers available as part of this RFP. We have two tracks as part of the RFP. Track one is properties requiring construction or that are undergoing substantial rehabilitation. And the second track is for existing properties. The contracts for the project-based vouchers will be 20 years. Properties can request a maximum number of units depending on the situation of the property. So if a property is general population, the property can request a hire of 25 units or 25% of units of the property. So that means if 25% of your units, like let's say there's 200 units, that means you could request up to 50. If a property is small, 20 units, you could request the full 20. So it is the hire of 25 or 25%. Properties that are located in a HUD designated low poverty area can request up to 40% of their units. The HUD designation is outlined in a map that's searchable. The link for the map is located in the RFP. So the property must be in one of the HUD designated low poverty areas to be eligible for that 40% of units. Or for properties serving elderly households, which by definition of the voucher is age 62 and older, for households that are eligible for supportive services, there is no unit maximum. So properties serving elderly households or households eligible for supportive services can request up to 100% of units in the property. There's no minimum request for this RFP. The income targeting for project-based vouchers are very low and extremely low income, meaning 50% of AMI or 30% of AMI households. Just note that 75% of new admissions into the Section 8 program, meaning our entire program, which is a statewide, must be at or below 30% of AMI. That percentage doesn't apply to households that are existing. So if you're an existing property and you want to serve the households already living at your property, they will be automatically eligible for the vouchers if selected and if they're income eligible and otherwise eligible, I should say. And then we list some applicable statutes and regulations here just to be familiar with as well as part of the program. So let's talk about track 1, which is new projects. Projects under track 1 are eligible for this RFP if new construction or preservation / substantial rehabilitation will take place in the next 2 years. Track 1 is designed for projects that either have been awarded or have current application pending for one of the other construction or permanent financing sources through DHCR, HTFC, AHC, or HFA. Some examples of funding sources include, but are not limited to, projects that are currently applying or have applied through the 9% low-income housing tax credit RFP, projects that are in the process seeking 4% tax credit, or and projects participating in the Small Building Participation Loan Program. Projects under the Track 1 category must not have started construction or undertaken any choice-limiting actions before entering into the agreement to enter into a housing assistance payment contract for the project-based vouchers. So that means that so if your project is selected and until we've completed the agreement to enter into the housing assistance payment, no construction or choice limiting actions can have been taken. All right. Track 2 under this RFP is existing projects. So applicants in Track 2 are for existing properties where construction or substantial rehabilitation has not taken place in the past year and will not take place in the next 2 years. To be considered, the property must have previously received funding through DHCR, HTFC, or HFA under the 9% low-income housing tax credit, 4% low-income housing tax credit, HTFC financing, home financing, HFA bond financing, SLIC, or other competitively awarded HFA or HTFC loan or subsidy, including state-supervised public housing and state-supervised Mitchell-Lama housing. To seek project-based vouchers as an existing property, the property must be existing housing as per the HUD regulations. They must have an existing regulatory agreement through one or more of the listed programs. And at the time of the award, they must be compliant with housing quality standards. Housing quality standards is the inspection used in the Section 8 program and meet other applicable requirements. If you have a property that already has a project-based voucher contract with us and you'd like to add additional units, the units must still meet that, that project cap that I referenced earlier, but you can also still apply through Track 2. So let's talk about our timeline for this RFP. The RFP was issued on March 15th, and we're doing the application workshop today, April 5th. Applications are due Monday, May 2nd, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we anticipate the awards will be made on or around June 15th of 2022. To be eligible for the project-based vouchers, a project must place one project or property per proposal. The property must be applying for or have previously received funding through DHCR, HTFC, or HFA under the 9% tax credit, 4% tax credit, HTFC financing, home financing, or any of the other listed programs here. And I'll highlight the state supervised public housing as part of that list. Eligible properties are single buildings, multiple contiguous buildings, multiple buildings on contiguous parcels of land, or scattered site projects. Scattered sites for us are those that are still listed under a single SHARS ID. I've gotten a few questions about projects with separate SHARS ID being combined into one. So just if you had that question, please pay attention to that section of the RFP. Manufactured home projects may apply if the project includes set structures and does not include a pad rent. And again, existing housing for this RFP must have all units that substantially comply with the housing quality standards for physical condition at the time of the award. So our unit maximum request is, again, a higher of 25 units or 25% of units of the property, so the higher of the two. Properties in the HUD identified low poverty area may request PBVs for up to 40% of their units, or properties serving elderly households age 62 and older, or households eligible for supportive services do not have a unit max. There's no unit minimum, so you can start with one. And eligible units cannot have an existing rental subsidy, meaning a long-term subsidy that's attached to the unit. When we say eligible units cannot have an existing rental subsidy, that does not include mobile Section 8. So we're talking about a longer term, more contracted type of subsidy. Our priorities for this RFP are as follows. Property types to be prioritized are those providing supportive services for people with disabilities or elderly people. To fall into this category, the units themselves must have the supportive services available to all the requested units. Properties serving veterans will also be prioritized. Properties serving homeless households as defined by Section 103 of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. State-aided public housing as defined as projects funded by New York's Public Housing Law of 1939 that are currently under regulation by DHCR and are not federalized or in process of being federalized and do not have another source of rental assistance for the units that are being requested for project-based voucher assistance are a priority that has been added this year. And properties located in a low poverty census tract are also part of our priorities. And again, that's as defined by the HUD project-based lookup tool as linked in the RFP. I'm going to briefly go through the application materials. So tab 1 in the application is a cover letter. Tab 2 is a form to fill out as part of the appendices of the RFP that provides basic applicant information. Tab 3 is an application narrative, which requests information about the property with specific questions in the RFP. Tab 4 is the operating assessment, which we ask that you submit both a PDF and Excel version of tab 4. Tab 4 for track 1 and track 2 do differ, so please just be mindful of which track you're in when you're looking at tab 4. Tab 5 is vendor responsibility questionnaire and additional certifications. Tab 5 is also has that part of the documents in the RFP as an attachment. And tab 6 are supporting attachments that you can include. Again, just please be mindful about the different tracks. Do have some slightly differing responses, so you want to pay attention to which track you're applying under. Some notes specifically on tab 4, rent plus tenant paid utilities cannot exceed 110% of the fair market rent. We also have a link to the fair market rent, which is outlined by county in the RFP. So you want to make sure that the rent that you're requesting in your underwriting doesn't exceed that amount. Some notes also outlined in the RFP, but I wanted to point out that when we request the contract rent on the attachment A portion of the underwriting and in the tab 2, the contract rent means the rent that you're requesting from the tenant, and then the gross rent is the contract rent plus the utilities that would be paid by the tenant. If you need a utility chart for your county, I can provide that upon request. So feel free to email me, and I am happy to provide the utility chart that we use for the vouchers. The debt coverage ratio for specifically looking at the underwriting for tab 2 properties must fall between 1.0 and 1.45, and the cash flow as a percentage of operating expenses must not exceed 10%. If you have a project where that's not possible, your numbers aren't working out like that, you want to be sure to provide an explanation for why that is. And any variance should be explained using the one-page summary of tab 4, and there's also a note section on the existing properties tab 2, or track 2, excuse me, underwriting. So applicants under this RFP are responsible for being aware of laws and regulations regarding PBV vouchers. Properties that are selected are subject to environmental review and subsidy land review requirements. Davis-Bacon is triggered at 9 project-based voucher units. And properties should be familiar with federal and state requirements as listed in this RFP. So this slide has a link to the application and also my contact information. If you're interested, I offer technical assistance for individual projects as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And I see we already have a question, so I'm going to open the floor up to questions. Please note that everyone is muted, so you can type your question in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask. The first question is directed toward Heather Spitzberg. Heather, can you share an example of a choice limiting action?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, hi. The choice limiting action as defined by HUD is any action that would commit the project to the proposal prior to the completion of NEPA. And so a choice limiting action ranges of everything. If you do not already have possession of the property, signing a purchase agreement would be a choice limiting action. If you have not, if the building is existing and you're replacing the entire roof and you've started to replace that roof, that would be a choice limiting action. If you have bids to replace your roof and they've already gone out to bid, and you want to do that work and you still want to apply for the vouchers, you cannot do that work once you have made your application for the vouchers. And there are a number of different kind of scenarios where work could be classified as maintenance. So if you're replacing one window, that would be maintenance. If you're replacing all the windows, that would not be maintenance. And so, you know, we are available to address any sort of site-specific questions when it comes to existing buildings. With vacant sites where you're doing new construction, you know, the answer is just don't do anything until you have your NEPA done. And that limitation starts with the application for the project-based vouchers, or if you've already applied for another federal source, that application.
Thank you so much, Heather. I have another question. Are the Section 8 rents limited by the stabilized legal rent? Connie, do you have the answer to that question?
Sorry.
That's okay.
The Section 8 rents are limited to rent reasonable, not technically. We do not get involved in the rent stabilized legal rents. We just really look at what the contract rent and the utilities to establish what the gross rent is affordable. And we make sure that it's rent reasonable for the area.
Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
All right, I have another question. This is probably one for Lenny. If awarded PBVs under Track 2, is the project prohibited from seeking tax credit in the future, say 3 years out, and from a demolition new construction option?
Wait, hold on a second. So basically the question is, one is that if you apply under Track 2, would you be prevented at a future date from applying for HCR resources? I would say that I don't believe so, but I would want to have a more granular understanding of what you're proposing before I would opine, and then run it by court and make sure that I'm not misrepresenting it. Can you repeat the question about the demolition?
Sure. Let's see. Is the project prevented from a demolition new construction option, like if they requested the tax credit in 3 years or more?
You're talking about demolishing a project that's existing affordable housing and demolishing and rebuilding it?
I think that's how I understand it. Terry, do you want to provide any more clarification? If you want to unmute yourself, that's perfectly fine.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. I wasn't sure if I was unmuted or not. Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking you guys is, we'd like to apply for the vouchers now. We expect that we will want to go for tax credits, say in maybe 2 to 3 years, and don't want to limit the option to tear down and provide new construction on that site. So if we've got these 20-year contract on 25% units or 40% of the units, then are we limited from being able to do that?
Again, I think that what you're describing is really not that philosophically in sync of this RFP. It almost seems like you need to figure out what you want to do with the property and hope that the agency has a RFP similar to this in 3 years over applying now for existing properties and then proposing to demolish it. it seems to be, if I were, again, I can go into a more granular conversation with you offline, but it sounds to me like you should decide, are you going to rehab these units under the track two, keep them regulated, or demolish them and rebuild them? And that impacts the strategy of when you apply.
Got it. Because if we demolish and rebuild, then the contracts are gone. Well, they're 20-year contracts. That's the thing. So Lenny, so that I don't hold up everybody else, would you be willing to put your phone number out there on this presentation, and then maybe we can schedule a call with you quickly?
Sure. I'm not that technologically savvy. How about this? 518-461-6591. Just call me and we'll talk further. Thank you.
So 461-151. Okay.
6591. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, the next question is, we are a state supervised housing authority with limited capacity to apply because of our small staff. Would it make sense to partner with a current Section 8 admin on this application? I would say the answer is no. The application process, I think if you need assistance, I'm happy to provide technical assistance, or I know there's, consultants out there that can assist with an application. So if your property is granted vouchers, HCR has a network of local administrators that will assist in the administration part of the vouchers. So we do our best to provide a lot of support through the contracting process and to determine households eligible, which is the kind of the beginning piece to make sure your existing tenants are eligible. And after that, the administration of the vouchers is primarily with that local administrator. If you would like to schedule technical assistance to talk through this a little bit more, I'm happy to do that. So Dale, if you'd like to, just let me know. All right, the next question is.
The answer is yes.
Okay, will you shoot me an email, Dale, right after this, and let's schedule a time. Great. Thank you, Dale. The next question is, because of the major change in utility expenses, somewhere north of 17% for us, can we use current costs for these items instead of audited amounts? We are using the 2020 audit. Otherwise, your numbers and your underwriting, I'm assuming, will be skewed. Bob, can you let me know if this is an existing project?
Yes, this is an existing project.
All right, you can do that. What I would just suggest is making a note in the tab 4, either probably both the one pager and on the underwriting, explaining what the change was and why you made it. Part of what we're verifying in the underwriting is that the numbers are realistic based on the last audit. So if you provide the explanation, that'll help just for us to understand in your application that why the difference. But yes, you could do that. All right, thank you. This one's probably for Heather as well. Can an existing building currently going through local law 11 facade work eligible for track 2? And I think that's really a question about, is this a choice limiting action?
Yeah, we got this in an email the other day. We would really need to see what the work is. We would need to have a detailed, itemized list of what that work is. So we can make a determination about whether that could be classified as maintenance or a choice limiting action.
Okay, so the best thing would be to submit something more detailed.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Heather.
Can you just clarify if it's you
you will need a detail to clarify if it's a maintenance work or what is the alternative.
I don't understand the question. Could you restate that?
So my question here, it's you will like, in this case, you will need a detail, a specified detail of the local law 11 facade work in order to determine what exactly. I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, what work is being undertaken?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question for occupied housing. What evidence of income eligibility is needed for the application? For the purposes of the RFP, the only information we request for existing tenant income eligibility is just that you certify, well, you're not really certifying, but you're listing if people have had an income determination in the past 12 months, if they fall into a 30% AMI, 50% AMI, or something else. So that's part of the tab for underwriting in the existing units tab. Beyond that, as part of this application, they won't be required to provide further information. But if your project is selected and if we are doing eligibility for the income with the individual tenants, we would be looking for like proof of income, like pay stubs or Social Security information or whatever income that they have. Let's see. All right, the next question, if we were approved, does the tenant amount become based on income, or are we permitted to continue charging a lesser tenant amount? So if the tenants are approved, they receive the project-based voucher. The tenant share of the voucher payment is determined based on their income. You would be required as part of the contract to be collecting the tenant payment. And yes, you would start following Section 8 rent amount guidelines for tenant portions. Yes, Stephanie, sorry, I just saw your follow-up. All right, so the question is, if a project is seeking project-based vouchers for new housing that will target adults with developmental disabilities, how much control over tenant selection does the developer or manager have once the housing is ready for lease-up? So I will say one part of the Section 8 regulations are that specific disability types can't be targeted for project-based vouchers, but you can have a specific referral source that would refer people to the waiting list for the vouchers, and selection would be based on individuals being selected from that waiting list. I hope that answers your question, but if not, please shoot me an email and we can talk a little bit more in depth one-on-one. All right, the next question. The property currently has 1/3 of the units receiving tenant-based Section 8, and the building was financed with home financing. Are we eligible to apply for Track 2? Can you provide a little more details? The home financing include a regulatory agreement with HCR?
Yes.
Okay. You would be eligible because of that. I think the challenge might be that you have tenant-based Section 8. You can apply for project-based vouchers for the units, but the tenants themselves have to accept the project-based voucher and give up their tenant-based voucher. So that's really up to them. If you would like to discuss this a little bit more in depth, I would recommend technical assistance, and we can dig into that a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just chime in, Courtney? I mean,
Oh, yes.
yeah, this is we have the agency has a pretty strong anti-displacement orientation. One thing we wouldn't want to see happen as part of an award of project-based rent subsidy is you're displacing a tenant-based rent subsidy tenant in order to make opportunity for a project-based rent subsidy type of steps tenant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to clarify, what I meant was someone could either decide to stay and accept the project-based voucher or decide to stay and keep their mobile Section 8. That's what I meant. So just, I didn't mean displacement, just so that's clear. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you.
All right. Are the Section 8 vouchers fixed to specific unit or is it flexible? Excuse me. So the Section 8 vouchers, with the project-based voucher contract, there is a specific list of units where the project-based vouchers are connected to within the project. So they are generally fixed. There are a few exceptions to that, such as tenants who require reasonable accommodation, but for the most part, they are connected to specific units within the building. And the last question I have in the chat right now is, if a project has engaged architects and engineers already, is it eligible to apply? Bidding and construction has not started. Heather, do you have a response to that?
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. If a project has engaged architects and engineers already, but bidding and construction has not started, is it eligible to apply?
Yes. So the bar on choice limiting actions starts with the application for vouchers. So anything that is occurring or has occurred to date would not be choice limiting, but once that application is submitted, then the choice limiting action prohibition starts, including if any work that is determined to be not maintenance is ongoing, it would need to stop on the date of the application.
Thank you very much. All right, I've come to the end of my questions in the chat. Does anyone else have questions that that they'd like to ask by unmuting themselves? All right, great. Well, thank you to everyone for joining me today. Again, I would encourage reaching out for technical assistance. If you'd like to discuss any specifics or have any other questions that you didn't want to ask as part of this webinar. Thank you to Lenny, Heather, Connie, and Dan for joining me today. And I look forward to receiving everyone's application or emails for technical assistance. Thank you and have a good rest of your day.